And with that, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Kayla Buckaloo, and I am the Outreach Coordinator at Clark Conservation District. I am joined tonight by my co-host Kylie Sahota from Columbia Springs, our presenter Ashley Smethers, also from Clark Conservation District, and of course our local turtles from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. After the webinar, make sure you fill out the survey that's going to pop up on your screen when we finish, just to let us know how we did and help us track our metrics for our grantors. So before we turn things over to Ashley and the turtles, I do want to let you know a little bit about Clark Conservation District and some of the exciting things we have coming up at our office. So Clark Conservation District is a non-regulatory agency that connects Clark County residents and landowners with the knowledge and funding they need to keep our soil and water healthy. We offer free technical assistance to livestock owners, small forest landowners, residential properties, and other residents throughout the county. We also put on a number of workshops and webinars like this one. We even have another webinar coming up next Wednesday all about keeping horse and livestock poop out of the water. To learn more, register for upcoming events, or watch past webinars, you can visit our website at clarkcd.org. While you're there, you can sign up for a newsletter or follow us on Facebook to get updates on new programs and upcoming events. And with that, I am going to go ahead and pass things over to Kylie and let her tell you a little bit about Columbia Springs.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. So nice to see all of you. If you haven't been to Columbia Springs before, you really should check it out. It's in Vancouver, Washington, just off of Evergreen Highway. And Columbia Springs, in essence, provides tens of thousands of children and their families with the opportunity to fall in love with nature. We build a community of lifelong learners and land stewards through our educational opportunities, walking trails, events, and workshops, which are open to all. I believe that there's really something for everyone at Columbia Springs, and I hope that we'll see you at our site soon. If you want to learn more, please visit our website at www.columbiasprings.org. I think we're ready for the next slide, Ashley. Perfect. So before we get to the turtles, Columbia Springs and Clark Conservation District would like to acknowledge that we are just in the beginning stages of our journey to achieving organizational equity. We know that there are things we could be doing to better serve our communities, and we're committed to growing in this way. So with all that said, we are starting this event by acknowledging that our organizations are located on and work on land belonging to the Chinook Nation. The indigenous peoples of this land, which include the Cowlitz Indian tribe and the Confederated tribes of the Grand Ronde, have been here for time immemorial and are still present today. Long before colonizers made their way to Turtle Island, the original name of this country, indigenous communities along the lower Columbia River thrived and coexisted with the land, flora, and fauna. We are not guests, but settlers on this land. As non-indigenous peoples, it is important for us to confront how we take up space on these lands, as well as how to give back to it, which goes beyond land acknowledgements and restoration projects. So now you've heard a little bit about us. So I think it's time to learn who's joining us today on your end. So we had this really cool poll that we launched, and I think we'll be sharing those results now. It looks like 8% of us are preschool children. Awesome to see all those young kids here today. Another 8% are K through 8 students. Another 8% are high school students. So we've got lots of young learners here, so excited to see you all. 27% are parents watching with their kids. Hi, everyone. We've got 42% are members of the public. One of our individuals here is a natural resource professional, and 18 of you just really love turtles, which is fantastic. We are so glad to see you all, and I think we're all in the same boat with just really loving turtles here. And one of our biggest turtle lovers is our presenter, Ashley. Ashley Smithers is a conservation specialist at Clark Conservation District, where she works with local landowners to implement conservation practices and coordinates workshops. She has a master's in environmental management from Portland State University. Her studies were focused on urban turtle conservation. In addition to her expertise in turtle conservation, she has spent many years studying amphibians and habitat restoration in urban and rural communities. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Awesome. And I hope by the end of this presentation, I have 100% of you loving turtles. So with that, I am going to get to our favorite topic, hopefully. I'll get those others of you into it. Turtles. So I'm going to really try to make this super interactive for you all. And like Kayla mentioned, we're going to be using that Q&A. And so I just want to make sure that you guys are, putting those questions in so that when we get to those times, we can ask as many questions as possible. So I would love to hear what you guys are most excited to hear about tonight. And so if you guys want to pop some of those things into the chat box, feel free to do that. Also, when you put something in the Q&A box, we're going to have a little thumbs up, hopefully, that you will be able to click and then let everyone know, or let us know which is the favorite questions to ask. So make sure to do that. So I'm going to have the first part of the presentation where I talk about kind of turtles in general, their habitat, that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to introduce you to the 4 species. Just kidding. Hopefully I got some chuckles out of some of you. For those of you that don't know, yes, this is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And as Kylie mentioned, I did my master's degree studying urban turtles. So this oftentimes was kind of a joke that I was studying the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So just had to throw that one in there. But make sure to get those questions in for habitat, and then we're going to go through and talk about our native turtle species, and then we're going to talk about our non-native turtle species and go from there. So you guys might be wondering, how in the world did you get these turtles? So I have some permits to be able to have these turtles at my home. A little later, when you meet the turtles, you're gonna find out that one of them is state listed as a species of greatest conservation need and endangered in the state of Washington. And then 2 of the species are listed in the state of Oregon as conservation strategy species. So these species all have, all turtle species actually worldwide are in decline because of habitat loss and many other reasons. And these critters came to us for various different reasons. And now they're educational animals with ODF and W. So when you are out in the wild, I want you guys to just remember that just like you guys like to stay at your home and have your home be protected, so do the turtles. So we want to make sure that if we see them in the wild, we keep them in the wild, and that we don't release our pet turtles into the wild, and we don't take any home for pets. And that's all the reasons that these species ended up becoming educational animals, was because of some of those things that just happened to them. So make sure that you don't do that. And these are just a couple of fun signs I found on the internet that I think just really remind us of why we should keep our animals wild. So with that, Kayla, can you launch this first poll? I want to see what you guys think are our 2 native turtle species to Washington. There are 2 of them. Do you think it is the red-eared slider, the painted turtle, the pond turtle, the snapping turtle, or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And you can switch 2 of those. So there are 2 of these. So I see some people that think that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are native. I'm not so sure about that one. So we'll give it a couple more minutes or seconds. So get your guesses in, and hopefully, and we'll find out real soon. And I just wanted to remind everyone too that turtles are reptiles, not amphibians. It's sometimes a little confusing because they do go into the water and on the land, and so do amphibians, but they have their rougher skin, and they have these eggs that I'll show you later that are kind of have a leathery shell to them, and they have a couple of differences than our amphibians. So with that, let's go ahead and end the poll, and I'll go ahead and share that so you can all see. So we had a couple of people that think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are here, and you guys did pretty well on this, so we'll find out. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I am going to go ahead and show you some of our turtles. So this is the Western painted turtle, and this is one of our native species. This guy or gal is the Western pond turtle, and it is also one of our native to Washington species. And somewhere in here is the red-eared slider, and it is not from Washington originally. It is from the southeast part of the United States. And then in the other bin, because it's not a friendly one, it doesn't like to play with others, this one is the snapping turtle, and it is from the East Coast. And so, yeah, it is not our friend or not from here. So, and it sometimes likes to bite me, so I like to keep it back down there. Okay, so with that, let's get back to the screen share, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our the habitat of these various creatures. So many of you guys might have learned, I have a little towel because they're really wet, about life cycles in school. And even as adults, we like to remember our life cycles. I like to think about turtles with their life cycle of as hatchling, juveniles, and adults, as well as understanding the time of year. So I'm going to have a slide for each of the times of year to show kind of what they're up to. So all of them in the winter, that's December through March, are hibernating, or what we use, if you want to sound really smart to your friend, is bromation. That's what the term that scientists use for turtles. And so the painted turtle is buried down in the mud and underlayer of ponds. And you might ask me, okay, so how long are they? So you say December through March. So usually they're down there about 30-ish days at a time. And you might say, okay, so 30 days, how are they breathing? So that is what we call, I say, butt breathing or breathing through their bum. They have this really sensitive skin that you found on their bum, and that kind of like your veins, that the veins run really close to that, and then they're able to exchange oxygen with the water, and that's how they're able to stay underwater for so long. Normally when they're up and moving around, they can stay underwater for about 30 minutes at a time. The pond turtle uses the uplands or the forested areas next to the ponds, and they actually burrow down into the leaves and other duff, the other stuff at the forest floor, and they just burrow in, and that's where they are hibernating. So I'll talk a little bit about the hatchlings later, because they have two different ways that they work. And one is that they will either overwinter in their nest up in the upland areas, or they will move down and overwinter in the water, kind of like the pond turtle or the painted turtle. Okay, so then spring comes in March. So what are the adults? They are out there and they are just sunbathing. They are taking in all of that great sun, because we often say use the term they're cold-blooded. So this in science, scientists use the word exothermic, meaning exto and then the temperature, and so they're getting the temperature from the outside, or we'll say they're exotherms. And so the females are out there just basking and enjoying the sun, and that's helping them with digestion, as well as like incubating any of the eggs in them. They're also out there just like moving around, enjoying feeding and vegetation, and getting, different invertebrates or bugs in the water, vegetation, and fish are some of the things that they're eating. And then the males are also looking for the females to be able to mate and create more baby turtles. So one kind of fun fact about the feeding that they're doing during this time is that turtles, both the painted and the pond turtle, cannot swallow in the air, like above the water. They actually have to go under the water to get the pressure to be able to swallow. And Clark CD has a really awesome video that we'll show a link at the end, towards the end of the presentation. And it's both in English and Spanish if you want to be able to kind of see and learn a little bit more about that. The other thing, like I mentioned with the juveniles, is if they do overwinter in their nest, they are then moving down, they're coming out of their nests and moving down into the water at this time. Okay, so then summer comes, June through September. Again, they're out there basking, taking in the sun, they're feeding, and they're moving around, they're getting all their great food. And then the other thing is that the females at that point are going to start moving into the uplands to go nesting. And so they're looking for areas that are really close to the wetlands. And so you want to have a lot of vegetation so that as they move from the wetlands, the water, the ponds, and go to the uplands to be able to lay their nests, that they're protected along that way. And then when they get to the nest, it usually has pretty sparse vegetation, and it has like gravel and sandy soil. So oftentimes you'll see females on the edge of roads in urban areas, because that kind of is really similar to what they're looking for their nest. So if you see a female there, like, don't disturb it, especially during nesting time, but you do want to be careful of that. And then the eggs stay in and they incubate for 70 to 80 days, depending on these two species. So just again, the females are moving up to their nest and then they're coming back down. And so, we want to be protecting them during that time. And they move much slower on the land than they do in the water. So. Okay, and so now we get to kind of the last season, autumn or fall, September through December. And this is the time when the adults and the smaller juveniles are kind of going in and getting ready for their bromation or hibernation. And so they're kind of dispersing and doing that. And then, as I mentioned, one alternative that the hatchlings do is they will hatch out of their eggs, the little, this is actually snapping turtle eggs, but they'll hatch out of their eggs, and then they will move into the wetlands, or they will just hatch out and they'll just actually stay and overwinter in the nest. One of those two is happening. So there they go. So with that, I know that was a really quick overview, but do we have any habitat questions? Kayla, you are muted.
Yeah, good catch. All right, thank you for that great introduction to turtle habitats, Ashley. We're about 20 minutes into our time, so we're going to go ahead and take 2 or 3 questions to start with. If you have any questions about habitat that you haven't put in the Q&A box, go ahead and get them in there now, so that we have time to get to them. And we're going to go ahead and start with, here's a question from someone submitted ahead of time. Many of our smaller rivers have banks covered with invasive plants like blackberries. Can turtles survive there?
Yes, I mean, I'm not going to promote blackberry, and as I mentioned, especially for the pond turtle, it's a little bit harder for them to move through that stuff. Reed canary grass is like really bad for turtles. That was one of the findings from my research that I did, but there was some blackberry that they could kind of move through, and it does provide that, but it can get too dense, and that's really when it becomes such an issue, is like when it's really dense and it's causing a lot of erosion on the banks, that turtles just have a much harder time moving through. And if you're thinking about a female turtle, you're just trying to get to your nest as soon as you can and get back, because you can move so much faster in the water, and so the least amount of time that they have on there is the better.
Makes sense. We have a couple questions from people who are curious about where they might go if they're interested in observing or seeing turtles in the wild, obviously from a safe distance. But
yes, so again, don't be collecting them, but there are a couple of different places like Steigerwald and Ridgefield, I've heard, are great places in Clark County to be able to find them. I'm not going to reveal that yet, but maybe I will. Okay, so we don't have the pond turtle in Clark County anymore. And so if you are interested in seeing the pond turtle in the wild, you're going to have to go a little bit farther south. There are some populations, but they're pretty well protected where they are. But I know that one of the places that people say, I'm not actually sure if pond turtles are there, but Smith and Bybee Lake in Portland is a really good place for them. But I think Ridgefield and Steigerwald is great because they're just huge wetlands. And there's a couple other of our small parks that also have some turtles.
yeah. And we'll go ahead and do, oh great, we have a comment out here in the chat from someone who lives near Steigerwald who says that they are always out to sea if you know how to look for them. So that's great to hear. And we'll go ahead and take maybe one or two more questions now. So are pond turtles mostly found in ponds, or are they in rivers too?
They are in rivers as well. You are stealing my thunder a little bit, but this is great. So that is one of the things. I actually have a friend that goes, so pond turtles, as I mentioned, we're in Washington, we're at the northern extent of their range. And so we only have a small number of populations here. And so you start getting larger and larger populations as you move down south towards California. And so down in some of the river systems in Southern Oregon have some of these populations, and pond turtles are much more likely to be found in some of those like quick river systems. You won't find them like where it's flowing, but when it kind of lulls out, oftentimes you'll see them on those logs, and they seem much more tolerant. So, common names, it's just fun how they work.
Yeah, all right. Thanks everyone for those great questions. I know we didn't get through all of our habitat questions yet, but we're going to save them until the end if we have time, just to make sure we get Ashley time to introduce us to all our turtles. So, and next up, we'll have our session on our native turtles. So if you've got questions about those specifically, be sure to get them in the Q&A during this next chunk of presentation. So all you.
Hey. With that, I'm gonna jump into it. So the first turtle I'm gonna introduce today is the Western painted turtle. As you can see by this map, they are found kind of in a lot of our Western states. There is actually several different subspecies. So kind of this species of turtles broken out into a lot of different types of painted turtles. And there are a lot of different, 5 different subspecies, I believe it is, in the US. And so our subspecies here is that last word, bellii. So Chrysomyces pictus bellii. And so I just like to show that, and I'm gonna leave you guys with this fun little video of one of these swimming around. And so you can kind of see how they swim and move through the water. This is obviously in a tank and not in a wetland. This is another time that I had the educational turtles for a bit longer. So that's just kind of a fun way to see them. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop, and then if we wanna get you on the turtle cam again, we will find, I have two of them. So we have the two Western painted turtles. You can see them like this, and oftentimes you're going to see them on logs, and you'll see them and they'll just be kind of like this. And so when they're on the logs, the things you're going to be looking for is this yellow and black striping going on. And then you'll also notice that there's kind of red and orangish color along the edge. The other thing you'll notice is how smooth the top of their shell is. I know you guys can't feel it, but you can kind of see how smooth it is. The other thing is in the back, you'll see that this like edging of it is pretty smooth. Hopefully you guys can see that pretty well. The edging is pretty smooth on it. So I did mention that I had a male and a female here. So you might be asking, well, how can you tell? So the females, so which one's which? Let's see. Yeah, so the female, this one's the female and this one's the male. And the way that I can tell the male is if you look at their tail, you'll notice that the male here has a much thicker tail than the female, kind of at the base there. The other thing that you'll notice, and I know you're not going to be able to tell these by binoculars, but if you look at these nails on the female, they're much shorter than, oh, he's tucking his nails in. So the nails on the male are much, much longer. And that's just because the male will then use those longer nails to help grab onto the female. The other really cool thing that I love about painted turtles is that they have this unique marker on the bottom. Again, when you see them in the wild like this, you're not going to notice it. But for us biologists, if we were to capture these guys to do a study, we could actually use this bottom of the shell kind of like a fingerprint, because each one is unique for every single turtle, painted turtle. So if we took a picture of this and then we found this turtle 10 years later, we could look at the picture to compare it and know, and then be able to identify a particular turtle. So that's kind of cool. I also have a couple, let me see if I can find them. I have a shell. I know you can see the shell there, but I want to show you kind of the shell of the painted, and you can see that how smooth that back end is. So that's something that sometimes you can tell with a good pair of binoculars. You can just see if that shell is good. The other way you can kind of see this shell is kind of lower profiled. So, and this one also has that kind of fun. So that is our painted turtle. A couple other fun facts about them is that females can mature between 6 and 7 years old, and the females that are larger will actually lay eggs twice in the season. So that they are our native species, and they are not listed with any sort of conservation, which is like they're not listed in Washington, but they are listed in the state of Oregon as a conservation species of concern. So that is our first one. And now let's check out our second. Gotta find my screens. Okay, so can you guys see that, hopefully?
Yes, we can, Ashley.
Okay, great. So our next one is the northwestern pond turtle. It actually got renamed. It just used to be the western pond turtle, but they divided the southern group of them and the northern group into two distinct, I think, little species. So it's now the northwest pond turtle, and it is listed as an endangered species in the state of Washington. And it is also listed as a species of concern in the state of Oregon. I know some of you guys are joining us from there. And so that's a really cool, and again, that's why I have all these permits to be able to take care of this, to show you guys this species. So Unfortunately, like I mentioned, we do not have them in the state of Washington, or sorry, we have them in the state of Washington. We don't have them in Clark County. The nearest populations are in Skamania, and there's been a lot of what's called Head Start programs where they actually get the eggs and they hatch them out and then they release them in the wild. So biologists from several of the local zoos, Oregon Zoo, I believe, I'm forgetting my zoo names, but the one up in Tacoma and the one up in Seattle, they all are part, I believe, of that program. So let me stop this and let's see this one. So again, I have a male and a female of the oh, it's Can. Sorry about that. So, you know, you never know what you're gonna get these live events. So we have a male and a female, and the way you can tell again is the same as the painted turtle. So this one, can you guys guess which one is the male and which one's the female based on the tail? I'll give you a couple of seconds. I know you can't shout it out to me, but hopefully you're shouting it out at home. So if you said this one over here, then you are correct. So you can tell again that bigger, thicker, and then the nails are a little bit longer, if you can tell, than the others. So these guys are really pretty. I'm gonna go ahead and set one of them down. We'll set this one down. And these guys are really, they have this beautiful skin that's like kind of speckledy. You can hopefully get a close-up view of it. You can kind of see it. They're a little bit more, oh, there you go, drab colored. And if you were to see them again, most likely you'll be seeing them on a log. So you're going to kind of see them from this angle, and you're going to notice that we like to say it looks kind of like an army helmet. This is a little bit more of a kind of a cave there, and it's a little bumpier. And then you're going to just see this drab color and kind of the yellow under. The bottom kind of is mostly yellow with a couple of little splatterings of color. So, and then if you look at the back, it's still kind of smooth, but it does have a little bit more of it. So these guys are really pretty bumpy. So yeah, and then let's see. I have a couple of their eggs, so I'll just show you those really fast with lots of department of. So you can, these are ones that kind of hatched out, but you can kind of tell they're kind of like a bird egg, but they're a little bit more leathery and kind of squishy. And I know it's hard when you can't see them yourself and touch them, but they kind of have that fun appearance. And so you might, sometimes you'll see this kind of stuff on near a nesting site. So, and then just one last to just see that shell. This is one that's obviously much bigger, so you can kind of see how big they can get, but you can see how kind of it's a little bit more. And then this one I think is a great to just see how it looks like an army helmet. It's got that nice lump, you know, hillish to it and kind of this little bow. So yeah, that is our ponchos. Oh, I also have this. I'll show one last, hopefully warning. This is how little the hatchlings are. So this was a hatchling that didn't make it, but it's just an idea so you can see how tiny they are when they hatch out. Okay. So again, they're state listed, and somebody ruined my fun fact about how they can live in kind of faster water, even though they are called a pond turtle. So yeah, so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and I think I need to screen share again. And we will go to questions, and I'll leave you with this fun video. You can see how slow they are as they walk.
Oh, they're so cute. We do have a couple questions about our native turtles from the audience today. So one question here is, how hard are their shells, Ashley?
Oh, let's see. I mean, they're very tough. And one of the things that is impacting, especially our pond turtle in Washington, is something called shell rot disease. And that can impact, like, it can create holes and kind of impact how hard they are. But I mean, it's pretty hard. I don't want to hurt it, but like, they, when they're a hatchling and they're smaller, like they're more likely to get eaten by like a heron or something, or maybe even like your dog or something might like get it. But some of these adults, like I have found turtles with like marks in it where a dog has obviously bitten it, and like, and this could be like a coyote or something too, but they are able to withstand quite a bit. So they aren't able to handle cars very well. So if you do see them crossing a road in an urban area, or oftentimes you'll see them a lot of ponds in rural areas. If you do see them, we like to say just like see which direction they're going and help them along in the same direction. But yeah, they're pretty hard.
Yeah, super interesting. Let's see, we have a couple more here. I'll pick out a good one. So we saw from your demonstration that the pond turtles don't have webbed feet as much as the painted turtles do, maybe. Do they move?
I don't even know. Maybe.
Which turtle is fastest here if we're comparing turtle speed?
Oh my word. This is an amazing question. I don't know that. I don't know that, but I think that there could be some turtle races in the future. I know some people that have done some really fun scientific experiments with like throwing ping pong. Don't try this at home, but like throwing ping pong balls at amphibians to be able to see how fast they hop and respond. So I would not put it past somebody to have studied this.
Yeah, and kids out there, if you want to know this, maybe this could be your scientific experiment in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, and it could be important because, you know, as they mentioned, that these species are in declining. And so I think for me, it's really important to think about that habitat, and so that both of these species aren't moving as well on the land. So by having good habitat that they can move is better, because that was one of the things with my study, was there was a section of the pond that had a ton of reed canary grass, which is this really dense grass, and the turtles weren't using that whole section of the pond. And I think it had to do with the fact that they couldn't get to those upland areas very well. So
yeah, yep, definitely good things to know. I think we're running low on time here, so we'll hopefully get to more of these questions at the end, but I'll let Ashley move on with her presentation for now.
Okay, so the next species that I have is our red-eared slider. This one's kind of interesting. In the state of Washington, you can actually have a red-eared slider as a pet, but if you do live in Oregon, it is illegal to import, bring into, possess them without a permit from ODF&W. And that is some of the reasons why I think this one became an educational turtle. So just so you know that, but they are a very common pet turtle in the United States, and they're from the southeast part of the United States. So they are very similar. I'll show you. They're very similar in size to the Western painted turtle, but they are just usually a little bit bigger. So you want to go ahead and do that spotlight on the turtle cam again. Okay, so where are you? So I only have one of these. Same thing with the males and the females, but again, if it's sitting on a log, you will be able to notice that there's a yellow and black kind of along the edge. And the other thing you'll notice is this big red stripe. But I want to caution you all, because if you notice, it has that same coloration as the painted turtle. So see, here's the neck of the painted turtle, and see how they're kind of similar, except for that red stripe. So I want to caution you that if you don't see the red stripe, don't assume that it's not a red-eared slider, because some of them are pretty light. So you'll want to make sure if you see that red stripe, then you'll probably say, okay, it's a red-eared slider. But if you don't see it, then you're going to want to look for that edge coloration. And then you'll also notice, like, look at that. It's just really bumpy, and like the profile of it's very different. So again, kind of looking at the difference between the two, like the lower, smoother profile versus kind of a bumpier. You kind of see how it's bumpier on there? So that's one of the main reasons. And then if you have a good pair of binoculars, you can tell this one's got a little wear because, you know, it's been around, but I'll show you on some of the others. But this is really serrated down here. It's really jaggedy. So that's another way that you can tell that this is the red-eared slider. If you do move it over, you'll see that it has these, like, it's almost like somebody took a black paintbrush and just dotted things on it. And that is a great way to see, to be able to see them. Hopefully you can see that, sorry. Okay, so like I mentioned, they get a lot bigger than the other ones. So as you can tell, like these shells, so here's a pretty big pond turtle, and here's a pretty big, hopefully you can kind of see, they're a little bit different in size. So again, you can see that cool serrated edges down at the bottom of that, yep, okay. So now we'll go ahead, and how are we doing on time? Okay, so the next one we have is our common snapping turtle. I'm gonna actually stop that, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna share this, a fun little video of a snapping turtle.
Hey, hey! Get out of there quick! There's tons of huge snapping turtles, come on!
Oh, I hope that made you guys chuckle. My husband found that gem. So the snapping turtles are a really interesting species because there's something called sit and wait predators. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and hopefully I'm not sharing the screen, correct?
You are not.
So we're going to go over to the turtle cam, and we will, oops, that's right, I kept hitting in this other one. Uh-oh, it's hiding. Okay, so our snapping turtle are what are called sit and wait predators. So as I mentioned before, this guy, he can scratch at me, likes to scratch and sometimes bite and stuff. So I don't always love holding them for very long, but what's really uniquely different about them is, one, they're much larger than our native species. So the largest one I looked up to try to see what the largest one was, and it said 75 pounds. They're typically about like 10 to 35 pounds, but yeah, so they're much, much bigger than our native turtles. And here, I'm going to show you a couple cool things. Like he's got these like really points there. And then the other really cool thing is on their tail. They have these little spines on their tail. Hopefully you can kind of see that. This guy's getting really movie. So as I was mentioning, they're sit and wait predators. I'm going to go ahead and put them down for a second. And that is where they can, I'll show you another turtle thing while I'm doing that. So they're sit and wait predators. So they'll sit there, and then when something comes up, they'll snap at it and they'll get it. And so that's kind of how they got their names. So what I was trying to show you on their top shell is it's really bumpy. if you feel this, it's just like bumpy and spiky. Hopefully you can kind of see those spikes on it. And it has these pointy back parts too. So, and there's the vertebrae of it. So this is kind of cool. And so this is kind of a smaller one, but I also have one that's really big. So just in comparison, it's much larger than the others, but you can see those pointy back parts. So they're really big, and they're, you typically find them in the slow moving water and stuff like that. So, and they just do a lot of stuff with competing for their food and basking structure, or, nesting sites. They actually produce a lot more eggs than the others. So, here's some eggs that were taken out of a nest. So if you ever see one of them nesting, you'll definitely want to report that so that we can, biologists can get those out of the wild so they don't compete. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go to questions.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Ashley, for that great introduction to our additional turtle species. So first question we have on this topic, and make sure you get your questions on our non-native turtles and to the Q&A if you've got them. Are red-eared sliders a problem in Clark County?
I mean, yeah, because again, they're similar sizes to our native turtles. And so what that means is it's kind of like if you're in your house and you have like 3 seats to sit at to watch a movie, right? And then all of a sudden a 4th person and a 5th person comes in and you're all trying to like sit on this same couch. It's just competing for the same resources. And so they're filling up that same space that the native turtles are, and they're eating the similar food, they're taking up the basking structures. And so and then they also, like I mentioned, the snapping turtle, they have like 50 eggs per nest. I can't remember the exact number. And our native turtles have like 8 to 20-ish. So depending on the species. So it is just a lot less. So then the red-eared slider just able to produce more babies basically too.
Great answer. And then we'll just have time for, I think, one more question on this before we make sure you have time to wrap up your presentation. So on a similar note, are snapping turtles considered an invasive species, and are there many of them in the wild in this area?
So they are, and I was asking, so I actually chatted with WDFW earlier this week about it, and they were like, yeah, we haven't found too many of them. I know that ODF&W knows of some places, and it's one of those things, kind of like if you've ever heard of like some of our plant species that were like, there's this program called Early Detection Rapid Response, where basically we want to get in and like, if you see those, like take them out before they become an issue. And so that's kind of with snapping turtles as well, is like, it doesn't sound like they are, but if you do see one, like we want to get that out so that they don't become a bigger issue, because they can really cause havoc.
Great answer. And for everyone who's wondering, you can see that information on how to report a non-native turtle in the chat box. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Ashley finish the rest of her presentation. And if you have any more questions, you can put them in the Q&A box and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end.
Okay, so I would love if you guys want to put in to the chat box a couple of things that you guys throughout my presentation maybe thought of that you're going to do to help our turtle friends. If you want to, I have a couple here that I'm going to go through, but maybe you guys can come think of some creative ideas, and Kayla and Kylie can share those with me in a little bit. But a couple of things you can do are create brush piles. That helps with just that upland habitat stuff. A really easy thing to do is if you have a pond, you can build a platform for turtles. This is often a really common service project that people will do in like middle school and high school. And then other things like I mentioned is plant vegetation around the ponds so that they can get to their nesting areas and have that cover. Learn your turtle IDs, which is something you all learned tonight, and we're recording this, so you can always go back, and there's also great website resources for if you want to review that, but hopefully you guys are experts at that now. And then report those sightings, like I mentioned. If you're in Washington, report them to your regional Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife office, and then especially if you see like a pond turtle. And then for your non-native species, especially the snapping turtle, if you find one of those, you can either report it to the WDFW or the Washington Invasive Species Council. And then it's really important to protect nest areas, limit your pesticide and fertilizer use. That can really impact the vegetation and like then what the turtles are able to eat, as well as just, they live in the water. And so anything that gets into the water can really impact them. And most important, don't release your pet into the wild and don't take them home as a pet. So I think we're gonna skip the quiz tonight, but if you want to, you can put it up and fill out that quiz. It's kind of a fun way to test some of your knowledge. So if you want to launch that, we won't go over it, but we'll save some time for questions. But if you want to fill out and test your knowledge, go for that. Okay, so with that, I will take questions. Any last questions that we have?
That was so fun to learn about all our turtles. We do have quite a few questions here, so we'll get through as many as we can. But Ashley, why do you like turtles so much?
I don't know. I think for me, originally, I just got into them in grad school, and it was I was doing a lot of stuff with amphibians, and it was an opportunity to do something different. And I just love their little facial expressions and like, I don't know, they're just a lot of fun and they're very charismatic. You wouldn't think so. And they can be really quick too. So we always say, oh, turtles are so slow. No, they can be quick. So they're just kind of fun and different.
Great answer. And so another question we've got a couple people are curious about. What do turtles eat?
Okay, so they eat, like I mentioned, vegetation, so aquatic vegetation, so different vegetation growing in the water. They eat different macroinvertebrates, different bugs. So there's all these different, so within that vegetation, oftentimes that houses a really great environment for a lot of different bugs to live. And so they eat those as well as fish and other things. So yeah.
Really interesting. So do you have any thoughts on some things that may be threatening our native turtles, like the northwestern pond turtle? Why do you think it's having such a hard time?
I think the number one thing is like habitat loss and being able to protect it, especially because the pond turtle in particular needs that area around the wetlands. So oftentimes they don't have enough of that, and they don't have like, even if they did have say land next to it, that they need that like thick understory stuff that they can burrow down into. And then oftentimes like we'll do disturbing practices in the winter time when they are burrowed. So maybe they're down there, but then we're tromping through there, or we're like going through and mowing it down. And so that oftentimes is impacting them. So I think that's one of the biggest things.
Great. And on that note, are there any attempts to reintroduce the pond turtle to Clark County?
I don't know about Clark County. I have not heard about that. I know that there have been ones, and there's some really cool videos out there. Probably if you looked up like the various zoos. There's a couple videos about them doing it over in Skamania County. So I think right now it's like knowing certain populations that exist and making sure to like supplement them. But I have not heard about anything in Clark County.
Good to know. Maybe that'll expand. Do you know what happens to non-native turtles or their eggs once they're reported and found?
It depends on the place, but oftentimes they are usually humanely taken care of. So yeah. And there are a couple of different, I know, pet shops and stuff that do work with the different state department, Oregon and Washington's Fish and Wildlife to like if you have like a pet turtle that you can take it to, because these turtles, I didn't mention, but they live like 30 years. So people will sometimes have to put them in their will because they have these turtles, or you get a turtle and it's just living. So especially if you had the pet. So yeah.
That's great to know, and answers another question about how long do turtles live. So another question from someone about how to help turtles. What should you do if you see a turtle nesting in an unsafe place, like for example, a busy pathway?
So you really don't want to disturb the turtle while it's in the process of nesting, but I would observe it and then make sure, like if it's a pathway or like the edge of a road, then like, once you see her kind of moving off, like if she starts trying to move over the road, because maybe the wetland's on the other side of the road, then I would help her along and just kind of lift her up, take her where she wants. But I think it's really important not to disturb turtles. They're really, especially the pond turtle is really jumpy almost, so you don't want to disturb them.
Funny, you don't think of a turtle jumping a lot. It's an interesting visual image.
They jump kind of off of logs into the water. Kind of push themselves off. Sliding sort of jump.
Speaking of where they live, how big of a pond or small of a pond do these turtles need or prefer?
Yeah, so especially a painted turtle, because it needs to overwinter in the ponds. So it needs to be a pond that is pretty big or big enough to have water and a good amount of kind of mud at the bottom of the pond for them to burrow into. I don't really know the like minimum size. A lot of the turtle species that I know of are in pretty good sized ponds and systems of sorts, like maybe connected systems. And again, I just think it's because if it's too small of a pond, you oftentimes don't have enough of that sediment and stuff for them to burrow, or it's a pond that dries out and that's just not going to work for them as well. But pond turtles, sometimes with those drying out, that's why they then go to the up. So they will use some smaller ones that might dry out because they go up to the uplands.
Awesome. How interesting. Well, we're right at 6:59, so I think that's all the time for questions we have tonight. But thank you everyone for your participation, and thanks of course especially to Ashley for that amazing presentation this evening, and to Kylie for helping us host. Don't forget to fill out a survey after you watch, please. It's going to pop up on your screen as soon as the webinar closes, and we've also put it in the chat box. And as Ashley mentioned, we do have a fun video up on our YouTube page that you can find with the links in the chat. You can see some close-up action shots of some turtles eating. And we hope to see you at some future events. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to end it? Okay, I'm gonna end it. Bye, guys.